Anybody else? Oh, ladies? Karmani punya nivahani sumangalani Nobody else wants? Okay. Translation. The sages Vishvamitra, Asita, Kanva, Durvas, Bhrigu, Angira, Kashyap, Vaman, Dev, Atri and Vashishta, along with Narad and others, once performed fruity rituals that award abundant pious results, bring great happiness, and take away the sins of Kali Yuga for the whole world by merely being recounted. The sages duly executed these rituals in the home of the chief of the Yadus, Vasudeva, the father of Lord Krishna. After Lord Krishna, who was staying in Vasudeva's house, as time personified, respectfully sent the sages off at the conclusion of the ceremonies. They went to the holy place called Pindaraka. Okay? Now, the purport by the BBT, which quotes Sridhar Swami's commentaries. In this verse, Shukadeva Goswami begins to narrate the story of the Brahminical curse that arose against the Yadu dynasty by the Lord's desire. Okay, and then now it's reference to the Tika of Sridhara Swami. According to Sridhara Swami, certain religious rituals, such as Ashwamedha Yoga, generate pious reactions. On the other hand, activities such as caring for one's children give immediate pleasure in the present only, whereas rituals performed as atonement take away sinful reactions. But the religious activities mentioned in verse 11, which are indicated by the words karmani punya nivadhani, they produce abundant pious results and great joy, and were so potent that merely glorifying these rituals relieves one from all the sinful reactions of Kali Yuga. Om Agyanatmanandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurmitan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurunmehan Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutarestayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Shri Gurunjananam Paramananda Madhava. Okay. So, Sridhar Swami indeed explains that this is the beginning of the important story that in fact frames the most valuable instructions of Krishna. Of the 11th canto, starting from chapter 7, we'll have Uddhava Gita coming up, but there is a story that surrounds that wonderful Gita. Very often misunderstood story. A story of disappearance of Krishna and Yadavas. So, strictly speaking, if you're very, very precise, the beginning of the translation by BBT belongs to the shloka number 12. And it's correspond by meter and by meaning and grammar. It is connected to the next verse about the joking, frivolous activities and things which were done by Yadu members when they saw those sages. So this is a list of the sages, strictly speaking, if you're very grammatically trying to be precise. It's not about the sages that perform ritualistic activities because, well, from the logical point of view, it wouldn't make sense that Narada would engage in any ritualistic activity. He doesn't usually do that. But, so translation, if you just go very close to the 11th verse, you would hear that after performing great Vedic sacrifices, which generated abundant piety, bestowed supreme auspiciousness, and through their recitations destroyed the contaminations of the age of Kali, throughout the world the sages were respectfully dismissed. So it doesn't say which sages. In the end it says just Munayo, so it's in general, plural, sages, by the arrangements of the Supreme Lord, who was then residing in the house of Vasudev in his form of all-devouring time. Then they departed for the place called Pindaraka, and it's a known place. It's not a mythological place. It's a real place. The whole thing happens in Gujarat. I don't know if it's probably the most popular congregation in the manner Gujaratis. So many ways to say your Gujarati Gajar. So it's an interesting place, and the whole Leela that is starting here is all based in that area of the Arabian Sea coast. That place, Pundaraka, is just 2 kilometers from the seashore. But the most important action will happen near a place which is quite a famous place connected to different Leelas, and it's a place usually for atonement of sins. This is the place where Yadus would go later, and they will depart from this world. Sorry? Prabhasa Kshetra, yes. Prabhasa is a place where, if you go there, it's actually a beach. It's like in Italy, where you have a Ratha Yatra. There are some beautiful beaches. It's a beautiful beach, actually. One place where the temple is, there are several temples, but one is a main newly constructed temple that you will see that from the natural stone it was created the water breaking structures. It looks like lots of pillars there, and there you will see a temple of Shiva, but then there is its traditional place of worship of Shiva, but then you will see an interesting murti of Krishna. The tree is there. I always admire people who believe the tree can live for 5,000 years, but it is true that every time a tree dies, they plant another tree in the roots of the tree. In a sense, it's the same tree. So there is a tree right inside the temple, and this is the place where Krishna departed. We are not going to talk about departure of Krishna for many chapters. In the very end, after it's like a frame of the Uddhava Gita. The beginning chapter talks about the disappearance, and the last 2 chapters talk about disappearance. And in between is beautiful philosophy. So it's not like you have... there is nothing in these verses about disappearance. But Prabhasa Kshetra, nearby to Pundaraka, it's a place where you have this tree, and there is an interesting murti, beautiful murti of Krishna with his foot up, like waiting for the hunter's arrow. But in essence, it's usually quite a misunderstood Leela. I have to be very honest with you. Bhagavatam can be misunderstood. It's not like Bhagavatam is always very clear, and everybody who reads Bhagavatam will understand what Bhagavatam is about. And specifically this Leela of disappearance of the Lord can be quite misunderstood. And it's not that difficult to comprehend how it is misunderstood. I will give you a slight detour, and I will explain how we can perceive Bhagavatam correctly. Bhagavatam, first of all, is Krishna. We talked about it many times, about how the lotus feet of Krishna are the two first cantos. The signs on each feet correspond to the number of chapters, and then you go up and higher, and you come to smiling face of Krishna, if you get there, if you're very qualified. And there we came to the crown of Krishna, the 11th canto. And that's so, the form of Bhagavatam is the same as Krishna. The function of Bhagavatam is also the same as Krishna. And specifically, Bhagavatam can be like Varaha. He can save the Dharma or the earth, the place of Dharma, from the depth of Rasatala, bring it up. So Bhagavatam saves us. And also Bhagavatam can be just like Radha Krishna, if you're very esoteric. If you read Srila Vishwan Chakravarti's commentary, you will see that Bhagavatam is actually in every canto, it's about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, about separation between Radha and Krishna. And you will find in each canto, almost in every chapter, Vishnu Chakravarti would find shlokas which correspond to this. And Bhagavatam is also all about the holy name. It's also a correct understanding of Bhagavatam. Like, for example, the 5th canto. Apparently, it talks about the universal structure. And the last chapters are really heavy because they talk about geometry and about rotation and about different levels and what happens above Bhumandala, below Bhumandala, and hellish planets. But in every chapter, you will have a glory of this holy name, preparing us for the pastime of Ajamila, which is also about the glory of the holy name. Every chapter, every canto is about the glory of the holy name. That's also a form of Bhagavatam. But to those who don't understand that Bhagavatam is not different from Krishna, but still seek the nectar of Bhagavatam, Bhagavatam can come as the Mahini Murti. It can come as Dhanvantari and heal you. Just by reading Bhagavatam, it can heal you from any disease. In fact, it can liberate you even from the body of a ghost. It can do that. But for those who consider Bhagavatam to be material, it can, and they look for material things. They look at it as Purana, written by whatever, Vopadeva, whatever. It comes as the incarnation of Mahini Murti. It's very attractive. They want to get the nectar, but they will never get the nectar. So it's an amazing feature of Bhagavatam. And this Leela is specifically very often misunderstood. And it was manifest by the Lord to bewilder those who consider his body to be material. His body is not material, but to manifest a detour. He shows people who are essentially not very qualified to receive the nectar. They're not supposed to get the nectar. So for them, he manifests this pastime, detouring them from the real meaning of Bhagavatam. But for us, it is nectar from the beginning and to the end. And for us, we see how Krishna is manifesting his eternal time form, Kala Atmana. Kala Atmana, Jiva Goswami comments on this, and he says that the word Kala Atmana indicates that Supreme Lord, Krishna, in his feature of indwelling, controlling of or in a form of time. And everything that happens in this canto is made to us to realize, so that we will realize that Krishna is the controller of time. Now, of course, he is a controller of time in the material world, and he manifests this Kala Rupa in many, many forms, actually. Of course, 11th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, basic knowledge, and you know that Krishna is a time I am, destroyer of the whole world, all these worlds. He is a destroyer of all the world. And when I think about it, it's rather sad feature of the Lord. For non-devotees, he comes as death, and for devotees, he comes as a separation from devotees. I am very nostalgic myself. I don't know, Vasudhama Prabhu, if you are nostalgic about the old times when all devotees have their shrikas, all devotees were dancing with mridangas, and it was like a beautiful, beautiful scene, almost like from Chaitanya Leela. I was just yesterday looking at the kirtan in 1996, and then somebody said, what about 1986? And there is a record, Vasudev Prabhu from French-speaking, Vasudev from Bhakt TV, he recorded 1986 Gaura Purnima celebrations in Mayapur, and it was the time when the Fosakis were installed, and a new altar was opened, and Niranjana Swami took sannyas. But then you see all the kirtans were so dynamic, like lots of mridangas. It was lots of dancing, and and it was quite different. I feel a little nostalgic about those times. I don't know. Maybe somebody thinks, oh God, it's good that we don't have to dance so much because I get tired. My legs are hurting now. But in those days, everybody was young and jumping and beautifully, isn't it? And you get nostalgic, especially you get nostalgic about devotees who departed in 1996. A devotee, I remember that incident when after a big kirtan in a temple room and GBC meetings start, and I think it was the 4th day of the GBC meetings, that and it was, I think, 4th floor of the Conch building, that Gaur Govinda Maharaj, suddenly he left the body. He was just talking about, to some American devotees, he was telling them about how he loves Gopal, and he just choked and it just disappeared. And there was a late night procession around Mayapur. I felt a little, I'd never been in Prabhupada Samadhi, it was already open. Prabhupada Samadhi, I never went there after dark, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. It was Harinam procession with Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And then, so devotees leave, and then you kind of, at the moment when they leave, you kind of like, no, but then as time comes, you feel more and more nostalgic and more sad. So it is a sad feature in a way, even for devotees. And it's working. The time feature of the Lord is working like a clock. It is a clock. It's a universal clock. The rotation of the sun and all the planets, and it's unstoppable. And the leelas of the Lord are also like that. They're like a clock. They start in one place and then they finish in that place. It doesn't mean they stop. That's the whole point of this Leela. That doesn't mean that the Lord actually dies. It continues in another place, continues in another universe. And this is one feature of the Lord, which is destroying everything. But there is another feature of the Lord, a more merciful feature of the Lord. Everywhere in the world, actually, except for Adadesh, I think, and maybe Bhaktivedanta Manor, everywhere in the world today, we celebrate Nityananda Appearance Day. It's it's the irony of time is that depending on the planets and the moon position at the time of sunrise, you will recalculate the titis, which is extremely difficult to understand. For me, I don't know what it is for you, it's probably easy. But it is difficult to understand how it's possible that here in Radhadesh, the appearance day of Nityananda was yesterday, and in Mayapur it's today. How do you understand this? I mean, it could be even in Munich, it could be today. So it's a little bit tricky to understand, but I can understand that it's a system of calculation that based on the universal clock that applies to this place. But this other feature of the Lord, which is the original Guru feature of the Lord, and Guru means heavy. It's the feature which comes with the Lord throughout every major Purusha avatars. Even in the spiritual world, there is Mahavishnu. And there you will see Anantashesh, who is serving the Lord, just as the Dham is serving the Lord, so that Lord never touches the matter. So Anantashesh is supporting the Lord in a spiritual world. And then he comes as a Mahavishnu, and you see this Mahavishnu in the end of the 10th canto, and even Krishna and Arjuna went to see him, and he is supported by unlimited number of hoods of Anantashesh, beautiful white shesh, same shesh comes as the supporter and the gravity center, the guru center of the universe. It supports this machine of time. Somebody has to support it, and he supports this beautiful clock, universal clock, that every day we see actually. Every day we come and see the sun that comes up, and the stars that rotate. We see this machine. We have to remember Lord when we see it, but we also have to remember that somebody has to support it, and it's unbelievably difficult, very difficult thing, and the most difficult thing, the most difficult service Shesh takes upon himself to support the whole universe. And the chapters that describes his glories is the 25th chapter of the 5th canto. In very detail, it describes how beautiful are his toenails, how beautiful is his intoxicated smile, and every single shloka, practically every single shloka that is describing Anantashesh is quoted again by Vrindavan Das Thakur in his Chaitanya Bhagavat, describing the glories of Nityananda. Nityananda, he is the source of Anantashesh. He is not different from Anantashesh. And in the avatar of Lord Chaitanya's appearance, he comes as Nityananda, and he again takes the most difficult task. If time is destroying everything, he is giving the mercy as the original Guru. He saves all the living entities by giving even to those who are completely unqualified something that Lord Chaitanya gave only to very few. He gives Krishna Prem. Of course, Lord Chaitanya is Mahavadanyaya. He gives it very mercifully. That's the purpose of his appearance. But the purpose of appearance of Nityananda is to distribute that stored nectar everywhere without any boundaries. Look who's worshipping Ananta on the Patala. They're not necessarily very qualified souls. But by the mercy of Nityananda, by the mercy of Ananta, they worship the Supreme Lord. And of course, if you are Mayavadi, then you don't get that mercy. It says there in the 5th canto that when the Mayavadis, or souls who look at the beautiful toenails, some of them, they're disqualified from receiving the mercy. And who is disqualified? Those who look at the toenails and the beautifully polished, shiny toenails of Ananta. They look at those toenails and they see themselves and they think, I am the Lord. I am the Lord. Lord is me, I am the Lord. And then that feeling completely destroys their opportunity to receive the mercy of Nityananda. But even if you're the most fallen, like Ajamil or anybody who came and took birth in the Kali, if you just open your heart and receive the mercy of Nityananda, an original Shesh, you will be saved. Not only saved, you also received Krishna Prem. Of course, he distributes Krishna Prem usually in not Mathurya, it's usually a different ras, but intensity of it is very strong. And of course, you have to say that there is a whole group of people in Bengal called Nityananda Vamsha. They claim to be relatives of Nityananda. Strictly speaking, they're not. They're not descendants directly from Nityananda. They're descendants of his associates. But even then, and you can calculate, this is Jananivasa's point, you can calculate the number of generations that came, and it directly illustrates the fact that whoever received Krishna Prem, anybody who became Uttamadhikari by the mercy of Nityananda, 14 generations of them, their descendants will be liberated. And you can see the 14th generation is over. Next generation, they don't want to chant, they don't want to do anything with bhakti, but it's amazing how mercy of Nityananda, even in this form, comes to fruition. Of course, we are a little bit critical of Nityananda Vamsha sometimes, following Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, because they were critical of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati as well. They claimed that only through them, only if you were born in this particular body, can you become the guru and spread this holy name everywhere. But Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda, and Srila Prabhupada, and Bhaktisiddhanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada did not agree with that, because that's not based on the scriptures. Everybody, doesn't matter what kind of body you were born, especially if you were born in India, especially when you have this amazing birth on the Bharat Bhumi, everybody has to go and help Nityananda spread this mercy everywhere. It's not restricted by caste, by any restrictions. The best book distributors in the history of ISKCON, the best preachers in the history of ISKCON, they were not even a male body, they were in a female body. That's just the truth. If you want to have a very successful Namahat, it doesn't matter who gives the lecture. It's important who cooks the feast. It's important who talks to the guests. And every single person who helps Nityananda to spread his prem that he was ordered by Lord Chaitanya to spread. Everybody becomes the guru and saves his land. This is the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is the mission of Nityananda Prabhu. And if we follow in the footsteps of Nityananda and Srila Prabhupada, understand the simple thing, then the movement of Nityananda will become very, very, very stable and very successful, just like it was when Janavamata was the head of the movement. It became so widespread. Even Jiva Goswami met with her and discussed philosophy with her. It's an amazing potency if you just don't restrict spirit by the bodily concept. This was the first lesson of Prabhupada of not restricting spirit by the bodily designation. And not everybody agreed with that. When Srila Prabhupada started his mission, everybody was a little bit cautious. He said, yes, I'm not sure about Mlechkas becoming Brahmanas. Yes, but it's true. If you're Kshudra, you're not supposed to become a Brahmana, isn't it? It's written in Smriti, and it's true. But in the Kali Yuga, Kala Shudra Sambhava, every single person is born Shudra, so everybody has to become qualified to become Brahman. And Prabhupada was so strict. I have to say, he was much more strict than we are today about his disciples' sadhana. He was, devotees were sleeping 4, 5, sometimes 6 hours a day. And they were engaged in the preaching work without any breaks or any kind of rest. It's amazing. It's amazing how much dedicated service they performed. And of course, they were qualified Brahmanas despite any doshas that you may see in them. They were definitely empowered by Nityananda Prabhu. And one of the most important things is that you should not see faults in the servants of Nityananda Prabhu or Nityananda himself. It is the main message of the first Leela, the first autobiographical Leela that Krishna Das Kaviraja talks about. Nityananda, or Balaram himself, is the guru of Krishna Das Kaviraja. He gives him direct instruction. You should do this, you should go there. Don't live here. Go there, go in Vrindavan. And this amazing revelation is based on the fact that somebody was criticizing a closed servant, a closed associate of Nityananda, Ramniketan. So that beautiful preacher who came there and was playing a flute, and he was ecstatic. He was not quite exactly the person you would put on a Vyasasana and to give a class. He was more ecstatic than you would expect, and that worried a little bit senior brothers and others in the family of Krishnadas Kaviraja. Just like when Prabhupada started preaching, it was worrying. Some of the senior sannyasis in the Gaudiya Math, Yati Maharaj wrote to the Hindustani national newspaper and wrote an article of how terrible it is that men and women together performing Sankirtana in Madras, now it's Chennai. So he wrote a letter complaining and saying, this is actually destroying Dharma. Why men and women? Especially with the Western bodies that dance like if it is some sort of a disco. And Srila Prabhupada, he gave an astoundingly severe answer to this. He said, first of all, they're all married. And it is nothing wrong for a husband and wife to jump in ecstasy in the Sankirtan. It's not against Shastras. This is what's written in the Shastras. This is what's written in Chaitanya Bhagavat. And then he says, but to be honest, we saw your own parikrams that you perform in Mayapur. When the parikram starts, 95% of people who attend your yatra are widows, and you see 95% of widows and a few sannyasis dancing together in Harinam. I don't think that's proper. So Prabhupada was quite straight with that. He empowered his disciples to be representative of Nityananda, and he defended them. Another story about Mayavadis. I spoke just a few words about Mayavadis, and it's a famous story from the era when Achyutananda Swami, who received initiation in 1966, and then he took sannyas. I think he was the second sannyasi, 1969, and he was preaching everywhere in India. And he was really sharp on his tongue. I mean, if somebody complains that I am saying something too much of a hot potatoes, I'm nothing compared to Achyutananda Swami. He was so sharp that people were afraid to argue with him. They were afraid to be with him on the same stage. But somehow or another he got on the stage. And a rather important gathering, and one of the inverted brackets, Shankaracharyas, quite a prominent guru in India, was there. And he went into an argument with Achyutananda Swami. He didn't like it a bit. He didn't like it even a little bit. He wrote a letter to Prabhupada complaining. And Prabhupada received his letter. And that was 1974, when Prabhupada would answer all the letters. And you have the letter of reply from Prabhupada in archives. Actually, in archives you have the original of the complaint as well. And somehow the letters that were sent to Prabhupada are still not published yet. But some devotees say that this is the most interesting stuff. When you see the original, what Prabhupada is answering to. That's really interesting. So he wrote a letter, and Prabhupada wrote back a very polite letter and say, please forgive my disciples. They're very young and very unexperienced. And so if they didn't follow the etiquette, I ask you to please forgive them. I ask them to preach this message, and they're doing the best they can. And then there is a letter to Achyutananda, and then there is a discussion with Achyutananda, and he calls him to his room and says, so what did you say to him? What did you say to him to get him so upset? And he said, well, I just told him, very simple, if everything is one, is it right? Yes, everything. There is no difference between this and that, no difference. So then there is no difference between a nice sandesh and a piece of stool. Would you eat a piece of stool? That really upset this Mayavadi. And Prabhupada said, that was a good one. Because it definitely shows that you can have a lot of philosophy. You can say so many things which looked right, but when you do a reality check, when you really do the reality check, it doesn't add up. So Prabhupada was quite happy with his preaching. And I think he shows up sometimes in Alachua. He stayed in New York for some time. And so this point of being representative of Nityananda sometimes makes you and puts you in a position of being criticized. And there's nothing unusual about that. That is actually the mission of Nityananda. He would upset sometimes people. Even Haridas Thakur would get sometimes upset by Nityananda. And he would come to Lord Chaitanya, how can I preach with this dude? He's too ecstatic sometimes. I cannot deal with that. But this ingredient is something that Prabhupada would tolerate. Ecstatic, avadhuta-like behavior of preachers, he would tolerate and encourage sometimes, and actually most of the time, because he knew that this is the energy, the movement of Nityananda. If you, of course, Prabhupada would himself do odd things. Somebody was telling me, I read those memories and I remember, I now understand. I don't think you really understand this. And one Mataji wrote to me, very senior Mataji. She joined somewhere in the beginning of 90s, and her guru, she tells, went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I want to be married. I'm brahmachari, I want to be married. And I don't want to be dependent on all those sannyasis all the time. They're always bossing me around. It's too difficult for me. When you're married, people don't intrude into your life as if you were living in an ashram with Gopinath, It's much easier. And Prabhupada, instead of marrying him, which you would normally do, you just give him sannyas. So that if you don't want to be near them, just go up there, up north, and just preach there your own thing. And And she was saying, yeah, so Prabhupada was a little bit like Nityananda himself. He would do things which are not necessarily logically clear and very stable. He would work it. He said himself, I worked it. And he told to GBC, now you make it right. I worked it. This is an Indian expression, I'm working it. So it means, I'm trying this, I'm trying that, I'm trying to see if that will work. With complete anxiety to make sure that the message gets delivered. If a couple of warriors die in the process, Prabhupada didn't really worry so much about it. It's just the truth of it. Same ecstatic mood of Nityananda, and even to make it very clear. And there is a GBC resolution just a few years back, confirming that and making it a rule for every temple. If you have deities of Gaur anytime, you have to follow this instruction of Prabhupada. You have to install deities of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati on the side of Nityananda, Gauranga. And that's the whole point, that Nityananda's side is Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya's side is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Gauravani Pracharine. So who is doing Gauravani Prachar? It's the Prachar, the preaching side of it was Nityananda's. Gaura Shakti Surabaya. It's a Shakti of Gaurachandra is the explanation, foundation, preaching to quite intellectual elite. This was the movement of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, publishing every day, intellectual preaching. He was the representative of Lord Chaitanya, and Prabhupada was representative of Nityananda. So it's actually the truth. You have to have a murti of Prabhupada on the altar next to Nityananda. That's his instruction. And he did it he himself installed, that's mind-blowing, he himself installed his own deity in Vrindavan to stress this point. And the other secret message in Vrindavan is, and it's not so secret, but it's puzzling many Gaudiya Vaishnavas. They don't understand this. They see Krishna Balarama in the center of the altar. It's a central altar. And they don't understand why would Krishna Balaram be in the center. We are not followers of Sakyaras, aren't we? We are not in this sampradaya. I don't know where. We don't have any acharyas. Maybe somebody there, some Bishima's deities, yes, maybe a little bit. Somewhere there is Murari Gupta's deities, and then he worshipped them as Krishna Balaram or Lord Ram and Lakshman. But we don't do this. We are in a different ras. But it's a secret message which is very, very clear. Krishna Balaram are the same as Gaura and Nitai. And it's by the strength of Krishna and Balaram that this movement is spread all over the world. And Prabhupada was very clear that when you preach, you have to come to Vrindavan to get the blessings, get the strength from Krishna and Balaram, and then your preaching will be successful. It's not about attaining Sakyaras. It's about the preaching effort of spreading the holy name, spreading the message of Bhagavatam all over the world, and fulfilling the mission. And to make it even more interesting, he designed it himself. Because usually Krishna Balaram deities, they have slightly different position of the hands. Every deity has slightly different position of the hands. Usually the forms are the same, but the hands talk about another secret message. Radharani, she's holding the flower, and at the same time gives the blessings. So some deities would only give the blessings without holding the flower. So each of them has slight language which correspond to the message. And the Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, gave this message to the rest of the world. He made sure that Krishna is standing there and Balaram is putting his hand on Krishna. So we know that Balaram is support of everything, but the message was that who is stronger? Who is stronger? Krishna and Balaram. He says, you see, Balaram is putting his hand on Krishna, so Krishna is supporting Balaram. The Balaram supports everything. In the whole universe is supported Balaram, but Krishna is the support of Balaram, because he should not worship, like they do in the Patala, he should not worship Ananta Shesh without worshipping Krishna. You should worship them always together. That's the secret why we worship Krishna, Gaura Nitai. We chant Gaura Nitai. Not Nitai Nitai, Gaura Nitai. It's not a problem to say Nitai Nitai sometimes, but you always imply that it's Nitai and Lord Chaitanya that are together. And this whole point is that Lord Chaitanya is the support for Nityananda's mission. He is the origin of the order to preach. So yes, some people, they say, only Nitai, he is more merciful. I'm not worshipping Chaitanya, only Nitai. No, Gaura and Nitai. So this whole point is quite essential. And I have maybe a few minutes and I'll just tell you a little short story connected to Nityananda's mercy. It was Prabhupada traveling around the world, so he would travel in different temples. The original Panchatattva was there in Hawaii, and he spoke about a little bit about the mercy of Nityananda. Then he traveled to Los Angeles to South America, and then he stayed in Caracas, Venezuela, and there were beautiful deities of Gaura Nitai. And that was his world tour. And then after that he traveled to Atlanta, Georgia. And there, it was quite a small temple room, even smaller than this temple room, half of this size, I guess. And many Sankirtan devotees, actually three biggest Sankirtan groups that were distributing Nitai's mercy. One of them was distributing Nitai's mercy in all the libraries, another was distributing in the West Coast, and they all came to meet Srila Prabhupada. They all packed into this small temple room in front of Gaura Nitai. And that was, at that time, devotees didn't know much about how to play Mridanga, not like you beautifully play Mridanga. At those times, it was a little bit difficult. And even Mridanga, Balaram Mridanga in the temple room was a little soggy. When you press, it didn't do any sound. So then Prabhupada asked for the Mridanga. And she just took Mridanga. And I didn't know that, but devotees said that he just, with one slap, you can actually tune Mridanga. I didn't know that. It's amazing. It's just like, boom, it's really strong. You have to be strong. So he just, heard that it is down, pushed it, and it immediately became in tune. And, and then he started playing the rhythm that devotees don't know. It's Dadra. Devotees usually, in the 70s, they didn't know Dadra yet. Now, in end of 90s, Aindra, he made it like the main rhythm for the kirtan. But in the 90s, even devotees were not using Dadra, except for Damodar Ashtakam, and then they had to look, anybody knows how to play Mridanga? Nobody, I'll just do kartals. That was the times. These days, Dadra is better than Kaherba. That's just real stuff. But so Prabhupada started playing this beautiful Dadra Tal, and he was singing this amazing bhajan. Devotees didn't know about this bhajan before. It's Para Karuna Bahu Vijana Nitai Gaura Chandra Tavavatar Sadashiromani Kevalananda Kana So he would sing and devotees were like transported to completely different place. It was an experience they never had seen before. First of all, from 1967, Prabhupada didn't play Mridanga. Did you know that? His doctor said, no Mridanga. Prabhupada would, in the beginning, he would just go for like 6 hours of Mridanga, and 4 hours Mridanga and Harinam. He would 2-hour kirtan, and he was always playing Mridanga. Sometimes now, similar to Mridanga, wooden. And that's a famous recording from those 66. So he would play Mridanga a lot, but then the doctor said, no Mridanga. And Prabhupada was, oh God, no Mridanga. But then he couldn't resist, and he wanted to give this mercy of Nitai. And he was so ecstatic. He was so ecstatic. He was crying when he was saying those things. And it's one of those few times when he just broke crying when he was talking about Nityananda's mercy. He would broke crying and say, those two brothers are so merciful. And then it's not a fake Baba, that you get from the professional Babajis, It's a real thing. He started crying and saying, you are all my gurus. You are helping me to fulfill the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's what my spiritual master gave me. So you are all my representative of my spiritual master. And his voice was choking in front of Glories of Nityananda Atlanta. And devotees who were there, they never forget this experience. They were there and they were like, wow, what did we see just now? Because real devotee, and I don't know if Bhagavati will talk about this tomorrow, real devotee never shows that he is Raganuga devotee. He would hide it. This is the principle of Raganuga Bhakti. You don't show it to others, except that if you just overwhelmed with the ecstasy of Nityananda's mercy. Otherwise, you don't do that. You keep it to yourself. And, it is true. It's the highest process. Raganuga sadhana, but if you see the Raganuga sadhana bhakta and regular Vaidhi bhakta next to each other, you will see no difference. They both do the same thing. It's in the heart that's different. They do it not because they're afraid, not because you have to, it's your responsibility, Prabhu. He do it because he loves his guru, he loves Gaura Nitai. He wants to do it not because he has to do it, but because of the heart that is so soft. So, of course, Srila Prabhupada every time he would emphasize the order of his spiritual master and the fact that he just fulfilling the order of his spiritual master. But by doing this, he was not doing it because he had to do it. Okay, my spiritual master sent me to London or to Germany. I'll write a report. I did this lecture here and this lecture there, and then you see I did whatever you told me, I did it, so no problem. No, he didn't do it like this. He did it with complete, overwhelming dependence on the mercy of Nityananda. He did it without any... You put self-restraints sometimes when somebody gives you an order. If somebody tells you, Prabhu, you have to preach in Germany, Prabhu. And then you're like, okay, first of all, who are you? And second of all, why would I do that? But Prabhupada didn't do that. He took this to the heart. And it's exactly 90 years and 3 months since he received the order from his spiritual master at Radhakund. When he was there with his little child, Srila Prabhupada came there and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati turned to him and says, whenever you get money, print books. If I had a chance, I would take a marble from our temple in Calcutta and sell it and print books. So it was ecstatic order at the ecstatic place. And it made Prabhupada so determined that all his life was changed just because of this order, because he was destined by the horoscope to be the richest person in India. It was the most successful pharmaceutical business in India, It's not a joke. He had factory there, Lankor, and distribution center in Bombay, and a network everywhere. He was very successful, but Krishna had a different plan for him. And he just changed everything, and he made him the richest person in India. In real terms, the richest person in Nityananda's mercy. Anybody has any questions or maybe corrections or additions, Prabhu? Thank you.
So we are a preaching movement, and as a quote of Srila Prabhupada said, you have to go out and preach, because if you don't go out and preach, you don't get challenged. And if you don't get challenged, you don't grow. And Madan Mohan, 2 days ago, he spoke about duty. We have to perform our sadhana bhakti as a matter of duty. And in that way, we leave our comfort zone. We set aside the false ego and then we grow. It's the same principle. Get out, preach, don't be afraid, get strong. Leave your comfort zone.
Thank you so much for this encouraging, inspiring, and empowered words. Thank you. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Nitai Go Premanande Hari Hari Bol.